1985, Portuguese Grand Prix. At the end of a sunny morning, heavy clouds rolled in from the Atlantic, showing no sign of dispensing. All 26 starters have chosen wet weather tires. An easy decision to make, since the narrow Estoril track was already glistening, with few runoff areas and crash barriers menacingly close along its 4.3-kilometer lap. On this day, a new star was about to rise. It was the first pole position for Ayrton Senna, who was seen as the man who might finally spoil a second season of domination by Marlboro McLaren and their tag Porsche turbo engines. As the lights go out, the cars surge forward, hurling towering plumes of spray into the air. And it's Ayrton Senna in the JPS Lotus, leading a Grand Prix for the first time in his short career, shouted the commentator. Formula One was about to witness the perfect geometry of machine and precision. A performance that would elevate Ayrton Senna to the rank of a star, operating on a level far beyond anyone else. It was, in essence, a revelation waiting to unfold, a dance upon a drenched circuit, transforming into a fierce spectacle of speed and storm. Much has been said about Ayrton, but today I want to shift focus. This time, the spotlight falls on another hero, the machine, without which no legendary race could ever exist. Because in this dance, there are always two partners, the driver and the car. And if Senna gave the world mastery and audacity, his partner in this performance was the elegant, dangerously beautiful Lotus 97T. Its purposeful silhouette, stretched like a string, was cloaked in the black and gold livery of its title sponsor, John Player Special. Nothing about it was superfluous. It was pure speed, forged in metal and carbon fiber. We will speak of how Lotus, after difficult years, rose again as it stepped into the turbo era, of the gifted engineers and designers who toiled inside the workshops of Ketteringham Hall, Colin Chapman's fortress, of how new machines were born there, shaped step by step into perfection by the hands of masters and pilots hungry for victory. And at the apex of that journey stood the Lotus 97T. A blinding flash of brilliance, a black shockwave that ripped through Formula One and made the hearts of fans beat faster. This is the story of the black and gold myth. The story of a time when Lotus dared once more to challenge the giants. The story of a fleeting moment, etched forever into the eternity of the turbo era. The Lotus team, competing in Formula One since 1958, had long commanded the affection of motorsport fans. Over the decades, Lotus grew into one of the grid's most iconic names, perhaps standing alongside Ferrari. While the Italians were renowned for their powerful engines, Lotus had earned a reputation as the great innovator team, the builder of simple, lightweight machines that stretched the limits of engineering and, time and again, changed the very face of racing. By the dawn of the 1980s, Lotus had amassed over 300 starts, 50 victories, and 7 world championships. The culmination of Colin Chapman's golden genius came in the Lotus 79, the first car to fully harness ground effect, carrying the team to the 1978 championship. It gifted the world a new shape of aerodynamic thinking and earned the nickname Black Beauty. This leap made Lotus the benchmark of innovation, a living proof that a bold idea, forged into pure engineering, could bend the course of racing history. Yet, after the triumph of 1978, came a dark stretch. Overly ambitious engineering gambles turned into failures, leaving only shadows of former glory. Cars that showed brief flashes of speed, but never the consistency that challenged Ferrari and Williams. In the face of disappointment, Chapman knew a decisive move was needed to turn the tide. Celebrated as a visionary unafraid of bold engineering leaps, he chose to take another daring step, signing a deal with Renault for turbo engines. It was a union that would open a new chapter of the turbo era in Lotus history. Turbo engines in Formula One were not an absolute novelty. Renault had been the first to take that risk, unveiling them back in 1977. At the time, the paddock greeted the yellow cars with skepticism and ridicule because they often smoked and broke down. They were mockingly nicknamed the Teapots. But behind those clouds of steam, a new era was taking shape. Soon the turbos began to sing their song, a deafening whistle and a breathtaking surge of power, especially in qualifying, where the cars seemed to turn into rockets. Though the engines were still fragile, thirsty, and unpredictable, falling short of the naturally aspirated machines in consistency, doubts slowly began to fade. By the early 1980s, the turbos had firmly announced themselves. And in 1982, Ferrari's turbocharged V6 captured the Constructors' Cup, proving for the first time that the future of Formula One truly belonged to the turbo. Before the 1983 season, Formula One stepped into a new era. Regulations were introduced that banned ground effect, the technology Lotus had first unleashed back in 1977. It was a turning point. From now on, downforce had to be found not beneath the car, but on its upper surfaces and wings, demanding hundreds of hours inside wind tunnels. In other words, from 1983 onward, the world of Formula One was completely turned upside down. Under the guidance of Colin Chapman, development began on a chassis designed to integrate Renault's new turbo engine. But with Renault's turbo units available only in limited numbers, Lotus had to start the season with a second car powered by the naturally aspirated Cosworth DFV. To give this car a fighting chance, Lotus turned to a radical innovation: active suspension, a system that maintained a constant ride height on the track, maximizing grip and therefore speed. In 1983, Lotus became the pioneer of this technology, one that would, a decade later, become the standard across the entire grid. The idea was inspired by aerospace technology, and its chief architect was the Lotus aerodynamicist Peter Wright. The task of testing this bold innovation fell to Nigel Mansell. Coming from a working-class background, Mansell clawed his way to the top through sheer grit and determination. Back in his Formula 3 days, after a brutal crash that broke 2 vertebrae in his neck, he discharged himself from the hospital just to get back behind the wheel as soon as possible. That unwavering resolve impressed Colin Chapman, who brought him into Lotus and entrusted him with Formula One testing. The 29-year-old Englishman made his F1 debut in the 1980 Austrian Grand Prix and was handed a full-time seat after Mario Andretti's departure at the end of the season. Touted by Colin Chapman as a future world champion, Mansell had enjoyed a close relationship with his team boss, the pair becoming like father and son. At Ketteringham Hall, the atmosphere buzzed with energy. Engineers, mechanics, and drivers all believed Lotus was on the verge of a breakthrough, ready to reclaim its former glory. As preparations for the season were in full swing, something happened that no one could have foreseen. On the morning of December 16, 1982, the charismatic founder of Lotus, Colin Chapman, died suddenly of a heart attack at just 54 years old. The news struck like a thunderbolt, not only for the team, but for the entire world of motorsport. Yet, despite the tragedy, Chapman's family decided that his life's work had to go on. At their request, the leadership of the team passed to Peter Warr, a former British Army officer. Warr had been with Lotus since 1969, and in 1982, after Peter Collins' departure, he stepped into the lead role of team manager, effectively becoming Chapman's right hand. It now fell to him to inspire and unite a shaken workforce, while Peter Wright was left to finish the car without Chapman's guiding hand. The new machine looked markedly different from its predecessor. Its sharp lines echoed the design language of the Lotus road cars of the era. The letter T in its name, 93T, stood for turbo. Yet the chassis still relied on passive suspension. Renault's engineers flatly refused to allow Lotus to tap their engine's hydraulic pump for the active suspension system. Perhaps Chapman himself, with his legendary powers of persuasion, might have convinced them otherwise. But in the turbulence that followed his passing, Peter Warr had neither the strength nor the leverage to press the issue. The irony of fate was that by 1992, Renault would finally agree to adopt active suspension, and that very innovation would carry them to their first Formula One World Championship. The task of taming the brand new Lotus Type 93T was entrusted to team leader Elio De Angelis, a gifted Italian widely regarded as one of the brightest personalities in the paddock. Coming from a wealthy family, he quickly earned respect through his refined driving style. He was known as the last gentleman of Formula One, a driver who combined speed with elegance, and who had the rare ability to nurse fragile machinery all the way to the finish. Despite all the turbulence of the winter, the team's title sponsor, John Player, remained loyal. This meant new Lotuses would once again line up in the iconic black and gold John Player Special livery, a symbol inseparably tied to Chapman's name since 1972. But while the livery remained unchanged, the choice of tires forced the team into compromises. Perhaps fearing direct comparison with Lotus, acknowledged masters of chassis design, Renault's management blocked them from using Michelin tires, the same ones fitted to the factory Renault cars. That left Lotus with only one option: to partner with Pirelli, newcomers who had only just entered Formula One. Yet, in the first tests at Paul Ricard, the 93T on Pirelli rubber stunned everyone. It proved faster than Renault's own cars running the same engines. But raw speed in testing was only a prelude. The real test would come when the black and gold warriors faced the giants of Formula One. The opening rounds of 1983 instantly exposed the new Lotus's weaknesses. In the scorching heat of Rio, Pirelli tires shredded for all to see, and the Renault Turbo proved depressingly unreliable. And De Angelis had to take the start in a spare Cosworth-powered car, only to be disqualified for using two different engines. Mansell, on experimental active suspension, managed only 12th. At the second round in Long Beach, history repeated itself. Under the California sun, the Pirelli rubber once again gave up. De Angelis retired, while Mansell had to settle once more for 12th place. After Long Beach, Lotus abandoned the troublesome active suspension, but France still descended into farce. During practice, the mechanics accidentally dropped the car off the jacks straight onto Mansell's foot. Even with a pain-killing injection, he retired in agony. Elio's race ended with engine failure. With such a disastrous start, management knew urgent development was vital. And then came a chance. Lotus secured Gérard Ducarouge, one of Formula One's most respected engineers, whose resume already boasted championship titles with Matra and Jackie Stewart, triumphs at Le Mans, and key roles at Ligier and Alfa Romeo. Ducarouge got to work immediately, but miracles don't happen overnight. As he toiled at Ketteringham Hall, the situation on the track was bleak. Double retirements at San Marino and Monaco, and only a lonely night at Spa, plagued by handling troubles and poor reliability. A first glimmer of hope came in Detroit, where Nigel salvaged 6th, the team's very first point of the season. From his appointment until Silverstone, Ducarouge worked relentlessly for 5 weeks on an improved machine, the Lotus 94T, essentially a refined version of last year's chassis, now with the Renault Turbo and better balance. A result was crucial, with the John Player contract hanging by a thread. At the team's home race, De Angelis qualified fourth but retired almost immediately. Fortunately, Mansell, charging from 18th, salvaged fourth, the lifeline Lotus desperately needed. It gave the team breathing space and convinced John Player to renew for 1984, securing financial stability. But Hockenheim crushed the momentum. A double retirement, whispers of collapse, and War already scouting other drivers. De Angelis, who had turned down a Williams C to remain Lotus's number one, now faced constant failures and rising criticism, while Mansell, battling fragile machinery and Pirelli tires, was still the one more often bringing points home. And yet, the 94T slowly revealed its potential. In Austria, Mansell stunned the paddock with third on the grid and fifth at the flag. At Monza, De Angelis finally scored the team's first points of the season, and at Brands Hatch, he claimed his very first pole, only to retire with engine troubles. Mansell, still wrestling with tire temperatures and pressures, salvaged a brilliant third. The season finale at Kyalami brought fresh disappointment. De Angelis retired, while Mansell limped home with a dying gearbox. Many noted how new boss Peter War ran Lotus so differently from Chapman. Where Colin inspired, War applied pressure, forcing them to fight for their place. Yet it was War who kept Lotus afloat while other garagistes collapsed after losing their key figures. It was Lotus's worst season in 25 years, but also the year new life arrived with Gérard Ducarouge. The 94T became the foundation for the future, and late-season flashes of promise convinced John Player to stay. From the ashes, new shoots of hope began to rise. The 1983-84 offseason was all about hard work. Ducarouge's rapid improvements to the 94T quickly earned him the respect of Lotus mechanics, who nicknamed him the Duke. His 95T was a lighter, stronger evolution. Active suspension was dropped, with reliability and aerodynamics taking priority. Evolution over revolution. Peter War scrapped the doomed Pirelli deal, but Michelin stayed under Renault's control, leaving Lotus tied to Goodyear. Despite rumors, the lineup stayed intact. War had spoken with Senna, but John Player demanded keeping the Briton, sending Ayrton to Toleman. In Brazil, the promise of the new 95T came alive. De Angelis took pole. Mansell started fifth. Mechanical failures denied victory, yet Elio salvaged a podium, matching last year's best result at the very opener. Then came setbacks. Retirements in South Africa and Belgium. But the pace of the 95T was undeniable, confirmed at Imola, where De Angelis again reached the podium, carefully saving fuel. At Dijon, Mansell showed pure heroism. On the eve of the race, his mother had passed away, a secret he kept. Still, he fought through the pain, finished third, and gave Lotus their first double points in a long while. Then came the legendary Monaco. In torrential rain, Mansell led a Grand Prix for the first time, until lap 16, when he ran over a white line that offered no grip in the wet, sending his car into the barriers. Peter War exploded. Nigel Mansell will never win a Grand Prix as long as I've got a hole in my arse. That same day, Ayrton Senna worked a miracle, storming to second, and perhaps would have won had the race not been stopped. From that moment, John Player changed their stance, and talks with Senna were back. North America brought highs and lows, climaxing in Dallas. Mansell's gearbox failed on the final lap, and he collapsed from heat while pushing his car, as De Angelis salvaged third and rose to second in the championship. Back in Europe for the British Grand Prix, even a reinforced gearbox couldn't save the Englishman. Mansell grumbled about underpowered engines, fueling rumors of his departure, while Elio quietly kept scoring. Tensions grew as whispers spread of Renault courting Ducarouge, especially after both Lotuses outpaced the factory team in Germany. Yet, just as De Angelis led, the engine betrayed him. Mansell, starting 16th, clawed back to 4th. In Austria, Elio's frustration peaked. When his car caught fire, he drove it back to the pits in fury, knowing his title hopes were gone. Then came Zandvoort, and the paddock's biggest secret broke. Ayrton Senna had signed with Lotus. Despite his Toleman contract, the Brazilian's bold move earned him suspension from the next race. On track, Lotus salvaged pride. Reduced turbo boost and a conservative tire choice brought 3rd and 4th, best of the rest behind the dominant McLarens. By season's end, Lotus were fighting Ferrari for 2nd in the Constructors' Cup, but mechanical failures at Monza and the Nürburgring handed Ferrari the spot. The finale in Estoril came down to Lauda versus Prost. Lauda clinched the crown by half a point. Mansell was running 2nd when his brakes failed. Drained, he knew his Lotus days were numbered. De Angelis, by contrast, nursed his car into the points and finished 3rd in the standings, the best result of his career. Lotus ended winless. Yet, back among the leaders, Ducarouge's design, a run of podiums restoring De Angelis' confidence, and above all, the arrival of Ayrton Senna. Only one question remained. Could the team withstand two men who both believed they were number one? Lotus entered the new season under the sharp gaze of press and fans. The shadow of Chapman's legacy still hung over the team, but in the garage now stood a man already hailed as a future world champion, Ayrton Senna. After his fireworks at Toleman, he arrived not as a rookie, but as a first driver in every sense. The machine Gérard Ducarouge gave him only stoked the fire. The Lotus 97T looked like a weapon. Light, razor-sharp, packed with aerodynamic tricks from the 96T IndyCar project. In testing, it dazzled, already called the finest chassis on the grid. Already in Brazil, the promise was clear. Both Lotus cars lined up on the second row. Senna was headed for the podium, until engine trouble betrayed him. Elio De Angelis salvaged a hard-fought 3rd. And then came the Portuguese Grand Prix. A torrential downpour in Estoril that washed away half the field became the stage for Senna's triumph. He danced over the water as if it were dry asphalt, turning the rain into his ally. That victory was not only the first of his career, but also Lotus's long-awaited return to glory after 7 barren years. In San Marino, Senna fought Prost in a scorching duel, only to run dry on fuel. But after Prost's disqualification, victory fell into the hands of De Angelis, Lotus's 2nd in a row, though tensions quietly grew inside the team. At Monaco, Senna's pole ended with an early engine failure, while the cautious Elio claimed another podium and kept the championship lead. In Canada, he dazzled with pole again, but Ferrari struck back with a 1-2 as Senna left empty-handed. Detroit brought a 4th pole, but mistakes. A botched pit stop and a crash ended his race, while De Angelis once more delivered steady points. Then, in France, Senna flew off the track at over 300 kilometers an hour. By some miracle, he walked away unharmed. But doubts spread. Could the car endure his relentless style? De Angelis, consistent as ever, stayed among the championship frontrunners. Late summer told a story of contrasts. Retirements at Silverstone and the Nürburgring gave way to Senna's podium in Austria, and another 3rd at Zandvoort. the picture grew clearer. The team's future was being built around the young Brazilian, while the steady Italian might be facing the end of his Lotus journey. At Monza, Senna seized pole, but engine failure denied him victory, though he still reached the podium. And in the rain of Spa, he repeated the magic of Estoril, dancing on water for his second win, as De Angelis once more fell victim to the fragile turbo. At Brands Hatch, Senna dazzled again, but victory slipped to ex-Lotus driver Nigel Mansell. The Brazilian pulled ahead of Elio in the standings, but drew sharp criticism from Rosberg and other veterans for his aggressive style. The season finale brought only disappointment. In South Africa, both cars retired almost at once. In Adelaide, Senna was undone by failure in a botched stop, while Elio was black-flagged for a false start in his final race for Lotus. Rosberg's victory handed third place in the Constructors' Cup to Williams, leaving Lotus fourth. By the end of this turbulent year, Senna had cemented his reputation as a champion in waiting, though he finished only fourth in the driver standings. Elio, steady throughout the season, closed out the top five, knowing his time at Lotus had come to an end. It was a year of hope, heartbreak, and the first sparks of greatness that seemed destined to ignite in the seasons ahead. Lotus fans already knew the miracle never came. In 1986, the team focused entirely on Ayrton Senna, while rookie Johnny Dumfries vanished in the shadows. The Lotus 98T, with ride height adjustment and water injection for the turbo, dazzled in qualifying, but crumbled in races under fuel limits and failures. No match for Honda or Tag Porsche power. Senna scored 8 poles, yet from 16 starts, finished only half, ending the season fourth. Lotus secured third in the Constructors' Championship, but its future was now tied ever more tightly to one man. To keep him for 1987, the team secured Honda engines, but with them came the mandatory addition of Satoru Nakajima. At the same time, Lotus lost its longtime partner, John Player's Special. The black and gold legend gave way to Camel's bright yellow livery. Williams received the newest Honda motor, while Lotus had to make do with last year's version. Salvation was meant to come from Gérard Ducarouge's active suspension, perfected and immediately fitted to the new 99T. On bumpy tracks, it shone. Senna took poles at Imola and Spa, wins in Monaco and Detroit, and briefly led the standings. But on fast circuits, Williams were untouchable. Senna had to settle for podiums, finishing the season third. Lotus, too, ended up third in the Constructors, but the writing was on the wall. Without a truly championship-winning car, the Brazilian would not stay for long. And so it came to pass. In 1988, Ayrton Senna left for McLaren, a devastating blow. Lotus had lost the driver around whom the entire team had been built. The 1988 season became the year of McLaren's absolute dominance. Prost and Senna won 15 out of 16 races. Against that backdrop, Lotus with the new 100T looked pale. A heavy, unreliable car with Honda engines that never managed to deliver on its potential. Piquet, arriving as a reigning world champion, found himself mired in the midfield, while Nakajima scraped together only a handful of points. From there, the results only went downhill. The team did not die quickly, but rather slipped into a long agony that stretched until 1994. Explanations differ. Some point to the misallocation of resources. Camel's sponsorship money was spent on salaries for stars like Piquet instead of investing in the future, a modern wind tunnel, and an advanced factory. Others point to dependence on a single driver, and after his exit, compromises to please sponsors, including dubious engine deals. The structure of the team only deepened with decline. While Williams and McLaren were building state-of-the-art bases, Lotus remained in the old Ketteringham Hall, renting the unreliable Comtech tunnel. which produced flawed data. Finances were fragile too. After Chapman's death, his estate was frozen in the DeLorean affair, leaving the team in limbo. Even with big-name sponsors, there was never enough budget for genuine development. Lotus clung to outdated concepts, and the active suspension, pioneered by them, never became the weapon it might have been. Unlike at Williams, who, ironically, came closer to Chapman's own motto, simplify, then add lightness. All of this was 1,000 tiny blows, the first of which came with the loss of Colin Chapman. Lotus did not collapse in an instant, like a supernova. It was an explosion that left behind a slowly fading yellow dwarf. Yet, in the memory of the fans, one brilliant flash would remain forever. The black shockwave of the Lotus 97T at Estoril in 1985, when Ayrton Senna danced in the rain and made the whole world believe in the Lotus myth.